Welcome back to the Theology of the Buddy podcast, a podcast for Catholics who love tradition and want more of it. This is episode 58. My name is Chris, and I'm joined today by my wonderful co-hosts Mike and Brooke, and today we have a wonderful special guest who will be introducing in just a little bit. He'll be joining us shortly. We're actually going to be talking about the survey that was sent from the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith to all the bishops of the world on behalf of Pope Francis, seeking their input with regards to the implementation of Summorum Pontificum and how things are going with the Latin Mass in their diocese. So we have Father Matt, who's going to be joining us, who says the traditional Latin Mass very regularly, and we're going to get his input and insight on his thoughts generally on the questions of that survey. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, I'm joined right now by Brooke. Mike is also soon to arrive. Anyway, Brooke, how you doing, pal? You doing good?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's kind of a wonky intro, but yeah, we're doing things a little bit different lately. We're gonna do a little hangout intro spiel, if you will, just you and I, and then Mike will join in whenever he wants to join in and is able to join in. So, Brooke, what is crack-a-lackin'? You did something very cool this week. Can we talk about that real quick?
Absolutely. So if any of you guys follow me on my Instagram channel at Visual Litany, you'll see that I've been putting a lot of effort into work in my, I want to say, piece dedicated to the overall crisis of the church because of the coronavirus. There had been a picture circulating of Our Lady stabbing, the coronavirus, which was all well and good. But I needed to take it further. I needed to do something that, summed things up in a better way, especially for myself. Because I don't think the point was made well enough in that other piece for me personally. I don't really know how to describe what I should do. Can you ask me questions instead?
Yeah, no. Like I absolutely love this picture. I feel it very, it's really real. You can tell that it was from the heart for you. And I, not that your other pieces aren't, but you could really see the emotion in this one. And, so yeah, to kind of explain the picture. So it's centered around Our Lady, correct?
Yeah. I can describe the picture a bit more.
Yeah.
If you like.
Yeah. Share about that.
So, front and center, we have Our Lady, with her sorrowful heart exposed. There is an angel on either side of her holding up her mantle, and underneath her mantle, is a crowd of people, various ages, ethnicities, careers, ages and whatnot, some with masks, some without, some people in wheelchairs, some people, medical professionals and whatnot. And then underneath at the bottom is, I don't really know what the word for it is. It's completely slipped my mind, but in the center is a tabernacle with two angels on either side weeping, kneeling. And then on the one side is a church door with a chain and a lock on it with a crowd of people at that door. And then on the other side of the panel at the other end is another door with no chain and I've tried to make it look just like a bishop with the red cap. I don't know what that's called. What's that called?
Zucchetto. That's what it's
I don't want
called.
to say Yamak. Zucchetto?
Yeah.
Okay. And he's holding a key. So the narrative there is there are people trying to get into the church. They can't. The only people there keeping our Lord company are the weeping angels on behalf of those who can't be there. And then, the one person that could open the door is just not, their back is turned to us. And I'm not saying that that's every single priest or every single bishop, but man, I kind of feel there's a sting there, like, especially for what we're going through in our particular diocese. Like, it's tough, and we're not the only ones either. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's how a lot of people are feeling right now is, some people aren't even like banging on the door saying, you have to give us mass or you have to give us confession. I think there are people that just want to be with our Lord, and they can't even see him.
Yeah.
And, I think for me, that's one of the biggest things, because, we didn't really have a whole lot of opportunities to just go to adoration the way that we used to, because we're parents, and it's just kind of how it is. But you know how it is when you didn't know what you had until you couldn't have it anymore. Right?
Yeah. Yep. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I love the picture, and especially that,
thanks,
that
man.
as like kind of the basis, because that's the kind of cool part of it, right? Is it's this kind of, I don't know, diorama. I don't know if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I think that would be the right word.
Right, where it shows kind of the full breadth of the situation, and then, but you see Our Lady standing over top as kind of like, in a way, like the way I kind of read it is that Our Lady and her Immaculate Heart will triumph. But you got to be under her mantle in order to triumph. And and she's presenting to the people and the viewer, like, the solution for what we have to do right now is pray. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. And she's holding this really large rosary, right?
Yeah. So it's like there's the solution to what we should be doing right now, right? Yeah. And the other thing I was trying to emphasize too in the drawing that was are some arrows that were coming down from heaven. And this is a direct reference to older medieval pieces of Our Lady of Mercy. And I did find some images from pieces that had been made during the time of the bubonic plague. So I was taking reference to that because we're in a kind of similar situation.
That's great. That's
sorry,
so cool.
Mike just walked in.
So yeah, with regards to that print, you just did a fantastic job, Brooke. You knocked it out of the park. So now that Mike has officially joined us, do you have any thoughts on Brooke's newest art piece?
Well, I think it's one of her best ones. I really liked how the different kind of symbolic elements all worked in it. I think it's something you did better here than you've done in the past.
I would agree. I think I capture a really good, solid narrative in this piece.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Yeah. Another detail I kind of liked is if you look at the angels' faces, the one angel's face is quite stern, and the other angel's face is softer and almost sadder, emphasizing the justice from God and the mercy. It was just one of those subtle things that
that's the two angels at the top pointing toward the heavens.
Yeah.
And holding up Our Lady's mantle against the arrows. Mm-hmm. representing the chastisement. I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Like inspired. I just really loved it. And I think
Thank you.
it honored Our Lady really well, you know.
Mhm.
And maybe as a quick juxtaposition to that, before we get Father Matt on the call, Audrey Assad. Let's talk about her for a minute. So if you haven't been paying attention, Audrey Assad has a new, I'm not sure if it's an album or a single that's coming out, but the art that she's commissioned for this piece. Audrey Assad, if you're not familiar, is a Catholic convert and from Protestantism, and she's been very popular in the Catholic world for many years. In the last few years, she's kind of taken a significant spiritual nosedive, I think you could call it that. And her most recent piece shows a picture of the Our Lady of Sorrows, Our Lady of Sorrows with the third eye in the middle of her forehead. It's absolutely diabolical. And yeah, so this is with her electronic side project called Lev. And dude, I wrote her an email last night. I was praying and I just was like, oh man, I gotta email her. So I emailed her and I still haven't heard back. And Brooke was saying that there's people all over her Instagram calling her out on it too. But it's gross. It's absolutely gross. Are you seeing it right now, Mike?
That's messed up. Yeah.
I was just
I
showing
hadn't seen that until now. Ugh.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. So I messaged her and I told her straight up, like, there's no reason to blasphemously treat the Blessed Virgin Mary like this. You know,
I'd be curious to know her thought process, or whoever the artist was, his thought process.
Yeah. Yeah. It's bad, y'all. It's bad. So
I'd be scared to know what kind of weird syncretist crap went into that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, I just thought it was quite interesting, especially given, you know, Brooke just finishes this beautiful piece of Our Lady and Our Lady of Sorrows, right? And then and then you've got the opposite of this piece of garbage that Audrey Assad thinks is worthy of putting out on social media. So, pray for the conversion of Audrey Assad, please. The reconversion of Audrey Assad. And 2, if you want to email her, you can email levmusic, LEVVMUSIC @gmail.com. So do it. Okay. And don't be a jerk about it. Okay. Do it charitably and do it nicely. You know, don't be a mad trad. But seriously, call her out. If you have ever listened to Audrey Assad and enjoyed her music, it would behoove you to reach out to her and call her to come back and to repent. Anyway, so let's switch gears here. I'm gonna go get Father Matt, and we'll dive right into this question about the CDF survey. So, all right, let's go. All right, and now we are joined by my wonderful friend and fantastic priest of our Lord Jesus Christ, Father Matthew MacDonald. How are you? Welcome.
Thank you, Chris. I'm great. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome.
Interesting times we're living in.
True that. So Father, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you hail from, and a little bit about your story?
Well, I grew up in Newark, New York, Long Island. I'm the eldest of 3 children. Went to public elementary, middle school at Long Island, Catholic high school. Went to Franciscan University, Steubenville, graduated in 2006 with a degree in philosophy with minors in theology and history. Something that was instrumental in my own vocational journey, and big moment, not the only moment, was being in Austria, spring of 2005, to be present for the death of John Paul II in the election of Benedict XVI, and just seeing the Catholic history and patrimony in Europe. So that was a big vocation cementer that the Lord used. Before I entered seminary, I briefly discerned with the Dominicans in an unofficial capacity, and I also worked for Bill Donahue at the Catholic League of Religious and Civil Rights in New York as an administrative assistant. And then I went to St. Joseph Seminary. I was in seminary for 6 years, 1 year in minor seminary, 1 year at a parish, and 4 years in major seminary. And I graduated, I graduated in 2014, then was ordained a priest by Cardinal Dolan. I just celebrated 6 years of priesthood on May 24th, the Feast of Our Lady, Help of Christians. Wonderful. And I'm currently serving as the parochial vicar at St. Mary's Church in Washingtonville. As a priest, I got involved with the Old Mass even before I entered seminary. I had the first Latin Mass I went to was on July 9th, 2002 at St. Agnes Church in Manhattan, which used to be the Trinity Catholic cultural hub of New York, where it was also the church where Archbishop Fulton Sheen would preach the 7 last words of Christ on Good Friday. And I remember going to the Old Rite, and it was right before I went to Steubenville. I remember not completely liking it, but also being strangely allured by it at the same time. And I always had an interest in, when I was in college, when I could, I would, like on breaks, I would go to it, not every Sunday. But then after I graduated college, I learned how to serve it. And it became a big part of my own spirituality and, priestly discernment. It actually helped me encounter Christ. It wasn't the only way that I encountered Christ, but it was a major way to help me understand who Jesus was, what the priesthood was about, what the Eucharist is, what our faith is about. And it just changes you, once you're able to enter into the mystery through that, as a seminarian, I had some opportunities to subdeacon. So I learned how to subdeacon when probably I was in first or second theology a few times. And then when I was ordained a deacon, I served as a deacon. And I was not only involved with St. Agnes, but also a little bit in the Church of Lily Innocents in Manhattan. So and there was a time when I was closer to it. On my off day, I would go down once a month to celebrate Mass because I had ties dating back before seminary, but then over time it just got too much. But as a priest, I would say I offer the old Mass 1 to 3 times a week. If I could celebrate it every day, I would, but there's also, church law and things like that, but technically, if I have the chance to offer, a private Mass, during the week, I normally offer a little Mass. And I always offer Mass every day as a priest, since COVID though, I've been live streaming Masses, and the only reason why I live stream Mass is, one, to help my parishioners and people that I know remain connected to Christ and the church, and also to give them an opportunity to make a spiritual communion and to receive a plenary indulgence from that, which the Vatican has allotted through the Apostolic Penitentiary. But, and I'm grateful to do that, but there are some problems with live streaming. I will not deny that. And even said that, so that's, that's an important thing. I think, again, it was just, a lot of people will think that the old Mass is a museum piece or for a bunch of artistic, intellectual elitists. But it isn't. You know, as a priest, sometimes I'll get from other priests, oh, you guys, you younger priests, you just want to go back to the 1950s church. I'm like, I don't want to go back to the 1950s church. I want to know my history. I want to know my patrimony as a priest and as a Catholic. And I want to know how Jesus Christ speaks to me through every age of the church's history, from the upper room, which we're going to be celebrating this Sunday on the Feast of Pentecost, all the way to our age, through every part of the magisterium, not just the current magisterium, but seeing how that is linked to the prior magisteriums, having that dual, that authentic Catholic vision, not only through all the popes, but through the councils, through the lives of the saints, through scripture, through tradition, through the liturgy, through the sacramental life. Allow Jesus Christ to speak to me through that today and point me to my ultimate destiny, you know, eternal life, to be a saint, and to help me bear fruit in that, you know. And that's what I think the old Mass shows, you know, and it's important, you know. I would also say this, you know, the church, by her nature, can never promulgate a liturgical rite that would cut her off from the fount of grace, you know. So what that means is this: she can't promulgate an invalid liturgical rite that does not pour out the graces of salvation that Christ won for us on the cross. You know, to state otherwise would be to deny not only Vatican II, but the Council of Trent, and also the indefectibility of the church. Matthew 16 would make our Lord a liar. That said, the liturgical reform is not a black and white issue. It's very, very gray. It's very, very complicated. And it's important that we see the complicated issue, you know, that it is, you know. Again, I think there's, you know, some healthy forms of critique, you know, of the liturgical reforms that need to be listened to. You know, I think people like Pope Benedict acknowledge that. Boy, Michael Lang, Alcuin Reed, Michael Davies, Cardinal Sarah, Peter Kwasniewski. I think that's a good and important debate. You know, one thing, though, that I think is also important that we keep in mind, although like we're trying to rediscover our Catholic patrimony and that authentic sense of universal apostolicity that is inherent in tradition, it's also important that we realize that tradition's meant to bring us into communion with Christ, to have a relationship with him, you know, and it's not an in and of itself. And certain things within the liturgical debates I think are good and proper, but there's also sometimes a risk that we focus in on minutia, and we have to be careful of that. I'm not trying to downplay any of the debates, you know, or lessen the importance of the Latin Mass, but even within like debate over the 55, and I'm sympathetic towards that, you know, for the 62 Holy Week and things like that, you know, like that's a legitimate debate, but it's important that we don't get sidetracked by that debate from the bigger issues, the essentials, you know, not to say that there aren't some essentials in that, you know. And I think something that the old rite shows that's important, and yes, it is present in the ordinary form, but it's harder. When you go to the ordinary form, most at your average Roman Rite parish, you know, for the most part, there's a lot of doing, all right? A lot of doing. A lot of people come to Mass with a certain understanding of praying the Mass that's kind of reminiscent of what Thomas the Apostle had in his response to the Apostle saying, "The Lord is risen," you know, after Easter. Just as Thomas the Apostle said, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, his feet, his side and touch them, I won't believe. So people will say, unless I know everything that's going on at Mass at every single moment, understand it, and I'm doing something, then I'm not praying. That is not authentic, full, conscious, active participation in liturgy. That's a rationalistic minimalism that undercuts what the Mass, what the Eucharist is about. I think something that the old rite shows is that not everybody prays in the same way, whether they go to adoration or whether they go to Mass. I think you see a healthy respect of the theology of the mystical body of Christ at the old rite liturgy. Understanding that, not everybody's going to pray in the same way, but what matters, no matter how you pray, is that you unite your life to Christ in the present moment, at the moment of consecration, with all your hopes, dreams, struggles with sins, temptations, everything. And that's how you participate first and foremost. Receiving our Lord in Holy Communion is an added bonus, and it completes that perfection, in a certain sense. But it's a gift. It's not a self-entitlement. It's a gift. And for most of the church's existence in the West, her understanding was, and the old rite shows this, unite your life to Christ at the moment of consecration, in whatever way the Lord inspires you to, in whatever way, you think he's calling you to. Let's forget about the 4-hymn sandwich. I'm not necessarily against hymns at Mass, but but if we're just ba 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 ba, singing, singing things, I'm not saying that can't be prayerful in some sense, but it's stuck up in here, and I'm not communing with the incarnate God who came down from heaven in the bread and wine that just transformed into his body and blood that I just received. I'm not talking to him like I would a friend, and I'm not trying to over spiritualize anything. I think there's a lack of interiority in today's Catholics. It's a lack of identity. Not only do Catholics don't know how to be Catholic anymore, and they don't know how to be human anymore. And to know how to be Catholic doesn't mean you have to have a bachelor's in theology or a master's in theology from Steubenville Ave Maria or a Pontifical Roman University, And I think that's something that's important. Yes, we don't hit people over the head with things. We're not overly moralizing and finger wagging, but at the same time, we don't treat everybody as if they're the theological equivalent of a 2 or 3 year old. We feed them. Something that we're in the midst of doing in light of all the COVID things right now at my parish, at some point in the liturgical year, my pastor and I are going to say, and at my current parish, my pastor has been very generous to me, and he's a great pastor. And he's allowed me to say the old rite at some feast days, not regularly every Sunday. Sometimes if I don't have any obligations on a Sunday, I'm at the parish, I'm free. There are some parishes nearby that need a celebrant. I'll occasionally offer my services, but that's not every Sunday. Maybe that's once or twice a month at most, but something I think we need to get back to, and the old rite can help in this, is just essentials of not only Eucharistic belief and liturgy, but also prayer. Because with the crisis of the liturgy, there's also a crisis of the spiritual life. People don't know how to pray anymore. And this is something that Cardinal Sarah has spoken about heavily in his books, most especially the latter 2 books, Power of Silence and The Day is Far Spent, and in light of the big, not only the lack of belief, but the big disruption in people's lives and life of faith, I think it's important that we priests just go back to basics and be like, this is what we believe in the Eucharist and why we believe it. This is what we believe about participation in the Mass. This is what we believe regarding when you receive the Eucharist in a state of grace, this is what the Lord does to you. So open your heart. This is what we believe, about when you should not receive Holy Communion and why. And this is what we believe in regards to why making occasional visit to the Blessed Sacrament or adoration is so important. I think that's another branch of this that the old rite, plays an important role in. The liturgy is not all the church is about, but the liturgy, whatever rite, form of the Roman Rite, Eastern Rite liturgy you do, it's the foundation upon which everything else in the church, what she does, is built upon. It's the foundation to a cathedral. And like in any building, when you have a weak foundation, everything else is going to, crumble because of that eventually. I think we've seen that, So it's important that, yes, we have that good liturgical foundation. We build upon that. And we just don't idolize our own age. Something that Father Chad Rippinger speaks about. I'm not saying live in the past either, but having that dual Catholic vision, connected to the past, allowing the past to speak to us, but also living in the world of our age, yet not of the world. We can't be cut off from our past. We can't live in the past, but if we cut ourselves off from our past, then we cut ourselves off from Christ. And we're coming out of an age of iconoclasm in a certain sense, where there's been a lot of self-hatred that's crept into the church's life because of things like the spread of modernism, that Pius X warned about, and then John Paul II in Fides et Ratio that also addresses, and Benedict has addressed. We have to develop that healthy sense of reverence for ourselves, and who we are as Catholics. And I think that's something that most people in the world of our generation struggle with, accepting the gift of God who is ourselves, not only personally, but also within the realm of faith, and some generations of priests and religious, unfortunately, struggle with the sins of self-hate more than others. I'm not saying every generation has their virtues and vices, and there's good people and bad people in every generation. But, I think it's important to, pray when you see like a self-hating Catholic priest or religious, pray for them. When you see, people that may not agree with your liturgical preference, or that you know how to agree to disagree, but also at the same time try to find that common bond without compromising the true faith and, cutting off your own integrity, right. And that's a hard balance to strike.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. There is this, just kind of piggybacking off of that point about self-hatred, right? There's that desire to be loved by the world and by everybody. And in doing so, trying to cut off those things that are more difficult, or, and I mean, we've talked about this a million times on the podcast, right? Like the changes to the liturgy of the hours, to the breviary, removing the difficult Psalms and removing the difficult passages, in St. Paul's epistles, from the liturgy, from the lectionary and the Novus Ordo, things like this. And there's almost this mindset that, we have to be so welcoming and whatnot, and not make anybody feel bad. But the thing is, we should be willing, and should desire to be comfortable in every part of what it means to be Catholic, even in those difficult things,
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Yeah. And I think, again, there's a struggle right now in the church. And I think the Second Vatican Council tried to deal with it from Mark 8. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world yet lose his soul? The question that St. Ignatius would ask St. Francis Xavier every single night before they went to bed, and drove St. Francis Xavier batty when they were students together at the University of Paris when they were founding the Jesuits. The council tried to deal with that. How do you address the faith, communicate the gospel according to the needs of today without compromising who you are, who Christ made you to be? And that's a hard question. And that affects the liturgy, but that affects so many other things, and the liturgy is where theology comes alive, and that's something that Sacrosanctum Concilium 19 speaks about. And we see this compartmentalization of worship from the other aspects of Catholic life, such as prayer, such as the corporal and spiritual works of mercy, such as your faith formation. And that's not of God, and that's something that the church is still trying to overcome. But when you compartmentalize, there's not integration, healthy integration, then you can't be not only who God created you to be, you can't receive the gifts that he wants to give you and give others through you, with you, in you, for his glory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so maybe switching gears a little bit. So with this survey from the CDF, for the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, it was sent by Cardinal Laderia. Yeah. Cardinal Laderia, who's the prefect right now. And it was sent in March. So, I mean, this isn't a new thing, but one of the questions, right, that's been coming up is, kind of people on both sides saying, is this a problem? Is this going to create a problem for traditional Latin Mass communities? Essentially, the long and short of it is that Cardinal Laderia said, basically, in his letter to the bishops, he said, "Your Most Reverend Excellency, 13 years after the publication of the Motu Proprio Summorum Pontificum, issued by Pope Benedict XVI, His Holiness Pope Francis wishes to be informed about the current application of the aforementioned document." He goes on to basically say, we'd like you to answer these questions and submit them back to us by the end of July. So one of the things that, I don't know, maybe the overarching theme that I read as inferred in these questions is, what good is the traditional Latin Mass today? And maybe I'm wrong in that like inference, but when I look at these questions, I think, the Holy Father is asking, what good are these traditional Latin Mass communities doing? And so maybe we could get your insight on these particular questions, given your experience as a priest who says the traditional Latin Mass. You have that view of kind of the traditional movement in one of the biggest dioceses in the United States. And obviously you've been involved with it even prior to Summorum Pontificum, right? You were there when it was like an indult parish, right?
Yeah.
So so maybe can we get your thoughts on these questions?
Yes, absolutely. So I think it's important, one, not to be overreactionary, but also to be vigilant at the same time, in regards to this. Universe Ecclesiae alluded to the fact that there would be an inquiry about the implementation of Summorum Pontificum, at some point. So I do think this is somewhat connected to that. I also found it interesting that around the same time this was implemented, the CDF, which assumed the duties of the Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei, issued 2 documents allowing new prefaces, some of which were not so new, some of which were allowed regionally in the Gallican missals, some of which come from the New Rite to be used in the 62 Missal. And also the allowance of the saying, the commemoration of new saints canonized after 1962 in the Old Missal. So I don't think this move is necessarily like this dastardly plot to undermine the motu proprio at this point. You know, I don't think that's on the Pope's agenda. I don't think, you know, I don't think people should view it in that way. You know, I think at the same time, one would be foolish to just bury one's head and be like, oh, everything's honky-dory at the same time, you know, because obviously there are some bishops that are not fans of this. You know, there was the petition sent by Andrea Grillo, the Italian liturgist, you know, that was critical of Summorum Pontificum. But I don't think that was a reason for this to be sent out, you know. And I think it's important that, you know, again, with this survey, that you continue to give your kids the true faith as best as you can in a humble way. You continue, if you go to the old rite, go to the old rite. Say your prayers, you know, be present, be welcoming, you know, be helpful to the priest in whatever way you can, you know, and try to avoid falling into preconceived stereotypes that are not fair, not accurate, but people may have, you know, of the traditionalist movement, you know, and just, you know, be who you are, you know. I mean, if you look at France right now, about 90% of the Catholics who are still going to Mass in France, and that's maybe less than 10% of the population, the Catholic population, 90% of them will go to the old rite. They're booming in vocations. I think to suppress this wholeheartedly would be foolish and would risk schism. You know, I do think maybe there may be some permission for bishops to kind of clamp down in their own way on the local level. That may happen, but I don't think the motu proprio would ever be undermined.
No,
and I don't think, you know, our Holy Father, you know, our current Holy Father wants to do that. I don't think, again, I don't think he is necessarily a fan, but I don't think he's going to do that. No. And I, that's from my own reading, my own opinion. I could be wrong, you know, and that's also from other sources that I've heard, people that are closer to the ground than I am. So again, keep on saying your prayers, keep on going to your Mass, keep on being good, faithful Catholics, you know, be vigilant, but don't overreact with this, you know, show your presence to your priests, not only if they're the Fraternity of St. Peter, but your diocesan priests. Support them, listen to them, understand where they may be coming from with certain things when they say yes, and also when they say no. You know, be present to your bishops, supportive to your bishops, even with the bishops that may not be the biggest fans of the old rite, of Summorum Pontificum, you know, like, be present, be joyful, you know. I think by doing that, that will do a lot more for the old Mass, the traditionalist movement in the long run. Mm-hmm. And I will also say this, like, even though I'm a member of, I'm a Tradi priest, that's not the only that's not the only hat that I wear. There are other things in the church's life that have spoken to me,
It's not just a Beretta.
Yeah, it's not just a Beretta. And yeah, I have my Beretta, so, but,
It's getting serious now.
yeah, no, Benedict XV, after the death of Pius X, in his very first encyclical, Ad Beatissimi Apostolorum, states, there's no such thing as Catholics with labels. You're either Catholic or you're not. So being traditionalist is something inherent to being Catholic, just as being open to the movement of the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost in your life, just as being devoted to Mary, just as being faithful to tradition and orthodoxy and the teaching of the church. You're either Catholic or you're not. And some things in the faith only have one answer. Some questions only have one answer, one approach. But other questions have more than one answer and more than one approach. It's important to have charity in the essentials, respect in the unity essentials, respect in the in differences, and charity above all, as St. Augustine would say. And I think that's important. And it's funny, as a priest, and I saw this at Steubenville because I was sympathetic to the old mass at Steubenville. I let that opinion be known sometimes. I'm sure Chris could remember that in our days in the Cockatoo Love household. And right. It's funny, after I graduated, how tratty the household became all the time. That brought a smile to my face, in some ways. But it's important, again, that even though the Lord may call people to intimacy to him through a particular way, you have to also respect how grace is working in other people's lives. And somebody can be right one day and be wrong the next day. Somebody could be wrong one day and come to tradition the next day. And I've seen that. Not only at college at Steubenville, but in life in the seminary, and life with priests. I think if we have that common ground, it doesn't become I'm the king of the trad wars, or a holier than thou thing. But this is something essential to the faith that speaks to everybody, from the people with specialized theology degrees to the people that attend parishes of the Fraternity of St. Peter and even the SSPX, that live in these one-street towns in Nebraska and come from homeschooling families with 10 kids. And the dad is the local mechanic in the one auto body shop in that town. It speaks to everybody because it conveys Christ. And ultimately, the Mass is not about me, whether it's in Latin, whether it's in English, whether it's in Spanish, whether it's the old rite, the new rite. It's first and foremost about God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, giving God glory, praise, honor, adoration, thanksgiving, supplication, petition, reparation, and inviting him in to our lives so he can perfect us, save us, sanctify us. And if we don't have that focus, it could get distorted. In sacramental theology, as you are aware, there's objective grace, ex opere operato, and there's ex opere operantis, the subjective disposition to the reception of grace. And both have to be acknowledged within the sacramental life of the church and within the everyday life of the faithful. So how am I being a bridge to the truth, beauty, and goodness of the faith to others? How am I being bridged to Christ? And how am I being a roadblock? And how can I not be a roadblock and get out of the way? And that takes humility, self-detachment, prudence, grace, and prayer.
For sure. For sure. I think when it comes to the questions, right? I mean, you've got questions in that survey, like, if the extraordinary form is practiced in your diocese, does it respond to a true pastoral need, or is it promoted by a single priest? I thought, when it comes to like questions like that, the question, like you were saying, the importance of being that witness of charity to others, is really important. And I think, I don't know, like for a number of years in our diocese, it really was promoted by a single priest, and nobody really knew about it. And the community for many years was very insular and wasn't really opening themselves to newcomers and whatnot. And I think that was greatly to its detriment. But I think, I don't know, at least in my experience, I think the tide is shifting. Do you think the tide is shifting as well at this point in time?
I think the tide is shifting. I think you have some people who've been giants in the traditionalist movement who bear a lot of battle scars. And I've known both lay people and priests who have had a lot of scars because they were faithful to tradition, and I have immense love and respect for them. And I owe a lot to them in my own journey because they've given me wisdom, perspective, and support and prayers. So I thank God for them. And sometimes people are just set in their ways. And again, my experience, my preference does contain truth, beauty, and goodness, but it's part of a larger puzzle. So it's seeing beyond me to what God is doing. And that's the challenge. I do see within some communities, some are more insular than others. And you just have to, and as a priest, you do what you can to be a father to them, but you also have appropriate boundaries. And like a good father will let, his children spread their wings when necessary, but also fall on their butts when necessary and learn from that. And I think people are hungry to be formed, not just in head games, but completely formed in love and truth, in beauty and goodness, because those are all bridges to Christ, And I think any good father is going to know, and any good Catholic, any good father in the sense of the priest, any good Catholic is going to know how to be present to others, to evangelize, help form, but also know how to build relationships and not just be insular. And when there's a lot of betrayal, a lot of backstabbing, a lot of dissonance, there's that tendency to put up your fighting Irish, and it's understandable. And it's something that has to be, at least from a priest side, understood and worked through slowly and gently, not just be like, you're wrong, and also, again, we cannot just discount the average person in the pew. We had a parish festival at my parish to kick off month of September. We had a Psalm High Mass, and we had a German dinner afterwards. We dispensed everybody from meat obligation, by the way. Right? And that's something that I could do within my own parish territory as a priest on a Friday.
What a modernist. What a modernist.
So it's in canon law, and we put that in there. So you could dispense, you pastor, your liquor could dispense, but I'm all for the fasting for meat on Friday. But we had about 450 people at this one Psalm High Mass. I was celebrating at that Mass. And two very close priest friends were deacon, subdeacon, and we also had a bunch of priests sitting in choir. My pastor wanted this. I didn't give a homily, but the majority of the people at that Mass, this was the first time that they were there. There were some of your typical tradies that I knew from different places, but then there were a lot of new people. It was very, very well received, you know? And there was somebody that came up after and said, you know, Father, I just don't get the interest. Like, it doesn't speak to me. And I'm like, no, I get where you're coming from. This is going to really evangelize people, you know? This is going to really bring people to faith. I'm like, well, it did for 1962 years. This is what evangelized Latin America, Africa, Asia. This is what the Jesuits used. But I get where you're at, you know? And, you know, I'm not apologetic, you know, for who I am as a priest, as a man, as a Catholic, you know, but, you know, I'm a traditionalist, but I'm a Catholic first, and to be Catholic is to be faithful to tradition, period, end of sentence. But I also realize some people are not where I may be, so I respect them, you know, and I try to find common ground, even though they may not get what I do, you know, and I don't spike the football in their face, but I'm not afraid to give, you know, bear witness to the hope that's in me and what Christ has done to draw me to him in my own life. But I'm not blinded by that either.
Right. Right. One of the interesting questions from that survey was, does it occur to you that in your diocese, the ordinary form has adopted elements of the extraordinary form? Do you find as a priest who celebrates both the New Rite and the Latin Mass that the traditional Latin Mass has informed the way that you say the New Rite?
Absolutely. You know, and I think it's a good thing. I think though the old rite and the new rite, I'm all for cross-pollination, but there's a limit to that. And both forms of the Roman Rite have their own language. So when I can cross-pollinate, I do cross-pollinate, but I also, there's a line that you can't cross. Mm-hmm. And you have to respect the language of both, you know? And I think, you know, when I offer Mass privately, I always offer it adorantem, you know? Most of the time, 99.8% of the time, when I offer a private Mass, I'll offer a lone Mass. But when I offer, you know, occasionally an English Mass in private, I'll use Eucharistic Prayer 1. You know, I'll try to look at what are the traditional propers, you know, that are not only in the old missal, but also are in the new missal as options, and use those. I'll also use sometimes some of the newer stuff, depending on what it says, you know. So I try to be as proficient in both, you know, as I can, you know. But the old rite definitely has informed the way that I say Mass in the new rite. I'll do the digits, you know. And I think it's, yeah, you know, and I think it's a good thing. But again, and I'm not afraid to explain myself when people are like, Father, why do you do X, Y, Z? You know, like, you know, and, but I think hopefully over time, there's more guidance given on where healthy cross-pollination could happen, you know, but there's a certain line that as a priest, I can't cross, you know.
Right.
Maybe I would like to cross, but I can't cross, you know, just out of respect for what the church allows.
Right. Right. How would you see the ordinary form, if you want to call it that? I'm not a huge fan of calling it that, but how would you see that informing the extraordinary form? Like, do you see anything that could be significant? Like, not something that maybe can be done right now, but maybe over time as the liturgy continues to grow organically. Like, do you see any way that can be realized?
I maybe vernacular in some of the readings, but that's already being done in some ways. So like I want to respect the language of both rites. I think what the CDF allowed in the 2 documents it issued right around the time of the survey is a great start for that, allowing the celebration of recently canonized saints in the old rite. So now, like, a priest has an option following the certain guidelines in that document. There's certain third-class feasts on the old calendar that have to be set on their original dates. But there's certain feasts that must take precedence. But now, and this is awesome, for the vigil of the Assumption in the old rite, August 14th, you could tack onto that a commemoration of St. Maximilian Kolbe. So it shows the union between St. Maximilian Kolbe and Our Lady, which is an awesome, awesome thing. You could celebrate St. Padre Pio. And I know some trads may not want to celebrate John Paul II, or John the 23rd, the parents of St. Therese, St. Elizabeth of the Trinity, I think those are all great things, and all healthy things, and I think that's one way where the ordinary form can possibly impact the extraordinary form, allowing for that, and the document said these are not mandated. These are all options left to the discretion of the celebrant, So even with the extra prefaces, some of which were in the Gallican Missal, some of which are new, options are options,
Typical Novus Ordo having way too many options, just saying.
No, and there is a danger sometimes when there's too many options. And we see that sometimes in the new rite. There's so many options, the essentials are lost. Right. There's so many exceptions to the norm, nobody knows the norm. And why the norm is the norm.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
Who's Norm? I don't know who Norm is.
He's some guy from Cheers, the bartender. He was a comedian, Norm MacDonald, who was on SNL during the 90s.
True. That's great. Yeah, no, I think that's really great. I think, yeah, you nailed it with that. Like, I think in terms of liturgical stuff, like I think it was Dr. Peter Kwasniewski that said when it comes to informing the liturgy, everything that's really truly captivating about that you see in the Novus Ordo, it's taken from the traditional rites,
I think he's dead on in saying that, I also think he's dead on in saying that there's too much scripture in new rite. I'm not saying that maybe there can't be options or, whatnot, but I think there's a very rationalistic focus in the new rite. Whereas in the old rite, and there's also schizophrenia. So like you could be celebrating the Feast of Saint Therese of Lisieux, and the readings about like Sodom and Gomorrah getting smited on the 2 cycle readings. It's just like, what the heck is going on here? So like something I will do often when I celebrate the ordinary form, I will do the sanctoral cycle readings, to show that the saints concretize by their lives and witness the gospel, the word of God, and that it's all a tight unit. I think there is a certain schizophrenia that can happen that's not good, that causes a dangerous disintegration in the liturgy. Options can be good, but not all options are good or are the best, And I'm not saying I know everything in saying that. I'm not trying to be cocky or anything like that, or prideful, but I think the church in her wisdom sometimes will allow things, on a level of pastoral prudence for a care of souls, the canons of Utriquism, the Council of Trent states from St. Paul, the church is a steward of the mysteries of God. She could change her rites according to pastoral need as she sees fit. But that doesn't mean every change is a good change or the most prudent change or directly divinely willed from God. So I think, again, going back to the liturgical reform, yes, there's needed debate that needs to happen, an honest debate. But to just reduce it to, what we had before was so bad and what we had now is so great, or what we had before was so great, what we have now sucks, is not good.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe we can close out the conversation with this. So I had a friend and a listener from our podcast reach out to us in the last couple of weeks, and he said that now that everything is starting to lift and things are starting to change and kind of go back to normal, he's planning on reaching out to his bishop and to his local priest and asking for the traditional Latin Mass to be said in his parish. What advice would you give to a regular lay person for how to address that request to their bishop and their priest?
Well, first of all, I would say go to your priest. Always start at the local level. I think that's the most prudent thing, and I think it's important that you're, respectful, you're honest, you don't try to steamroll him over with your request, but you're honest. You're like, Father, I love the old rite. Is there any chance we can have it, maybe for a feast day or whatnot? If you know other people that have that interest, maybe try to coordinate with them. Not to gang up on the priest, but hey, this is not just me. This is a bunch of people, And if the priest isn't open, you respect that. But maybe find another priest, neighboring parish that would be open to that, And they're out there, I know some priests who are very holy men who are not fans of the old rite, that I owe a lot to, and I respect them. And when that question comes up and they denigrate it, I put on my 50-cent, okay, all right, okay, you're right, not in my head. And it's just, I respect them, but we agree to disagree. And I don't spike the football in their face, and I don't pretend to have all the answers, but it's, if you're humble, you're respectful, you're not like, we need this now. Why are you still celebrating the new rite? It stinks. You don't want to be saying that to your priest, your diocesan priest,
Right.
Something that if you do that, I think you will get somewhere. I think any priest, even if they don't know how to celebrate it, will respect you. There will be some that will just be it's Chinese. And even if it's Chinese and they don't like it, and they say no to you, that doesn't make them a bad priest or a bad person per se, or somebody that does not have supernatural faith. I think it's important to realize that, to see, yes, this is part of me. Christ has led me to him through this, but not be so caught up. This is my way. I really, really want it. Like a kid in a candy store, that was just taken into a candy store the first time, 2-year-old, and they just had chocolate. And now they're like, Mommy, Daddy, I want chocolate. They only want to eat chocolate. Give witness and hope and testimony to why you want this, in love and humility. And any priest worth his weight in salt will acknowledge that, but also acknowledge the limitations. Mm-hmm. If some people are jerks, you just find somebody who can accommodate you, and you pray for that person who's a priest.
Awesome. That's really good advice. Just maybe as a side note. So you were mentioning our experience in household at Franciscan, and by the way, best household coordinator of life. Just saying. But the interesting thing, right? And you can attest to this because you saw me at Franciscan, charismatic through and through. And, I used to get in debates over why I felt the, Novus Ordo, in particular, why a life teen mass was more spiritually beneficial than the traditional Latin mass, at college, at Franciscan, and God does incredible things. And maybe a person who says, no, I'm just, I'm against that now, you don't understand what God can do behind the scenes. You know what I mean? So the power of prayer is incredibly great. And I think your witness as well. I mean, not that, there was a lot of heavy-handed, tratty conversation, but, I know that you would witness to the beauty of the Latin Mass back then. And, and I think that also intrigued me and opened me at least to be curious about it, so that years later, when I had the opportunity to go, I felt more open to that idea. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I just think it's important to, don't just say, this person will never change and just kind of give up, but always pray.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, God works in people's ways in different periods in their life differently. And what matters is that you bear fruit, and the renewal can help people come into union with Christ in one way, and then tradition another way, and they're not incompatible. Yes, there's a certain spiritual maturity that has to happen, again, what are you doing to bring people to the Lord? That's the most important thing. What are you doing to help build relationships with people, not only with yourself, but with Him, so they can be saved, so they can find healing, salvation, eternal life, be the person that God made them to be. That's the most important thing. Everything else is secondary to that.
Amen. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Father Matt, this has been fantastic. Thank you again so much for joining us on today's podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been an honor to be with all you guys.
So great. So, if people want to find you, how do they find you?
Well, I'm on Facebook. I'm also can be found on. I'm at St. Mary's Church in Washingtonville, New York. So, if you Google my parish, St. Mary's Church, Washingtonville, New York, you can also find parish contact info. We also have a parish Facebook page. I also have my own YouTube channel where I've been posting masses and reflections during this whole entire coronavirus quarantine. So, so I'm out there.
Awesome. Great. Before we go, Mike and Brooke, did you have any other comments or questions or whatnot?
I did have one question I was kind of hanging on to, but I don't know if I want to, do you want to launch into another discussion? Or
there he goes.
Chris is ready with these rapid fire questions.
Father Matt, do you have time for one last question?
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. One thing we often talk about is how the idea of the Latin Mass or the Old Rite as a preference, and how often you'll hear from people that you can't say one form of the Mass is better than the other because they're both the Mass and it's just purely your preference. And we've argued against that, saying that certain things about these forms of the Mass can be superior in certain ways, and we can think of that objectively. Do you think that, like, A, is that true? And B, is there any value in thinking like that? Because, I mean, I know even if it's the case that certain things, the old rite were superior, say, you still have to respect where a certain person is at, right?
Yeah.
So I noticed you use that term, which is what made me think about our discussions on that, liturgical preferences.
Yeah. What I think you could say is this. I think the Martin Mosbach position, heresy of formlessness, is very, very accurate. I'm very sympathetic towards that. The new Mass is valid, but it can be dangerous, but you can't say it's intrinsically sinful. You can't say it's evil, to do that, you fall into like seat of econtism, but I do think you can make arguments, legitimate theological arguments, for the superiority of one form or another, to just say, oh, there's blanket medieval accretions in the old rite, we need to get rid of that. That's dicey. That's dicey, and I think that's presumptuous on our end. I'm not saying the liturgy can't be reformed and changed, but it's having that good stewardship. I think, like, if you look at the old rite of baptism, and I actually wrote a paper on this for sacramental theology when I was in seminary, comparing the old rite, the exorcism prayers of the old rite of baptism to the new rite baptism. And I got an A, and the professor was like, if you gave this to me in a doctoral class, I would have failed you. But you made a great essay, and it's suitable for the purposes of the class, and really address a yellow elephant in the room that has not been addressed. In the old rite of baptism, there's numerous prayers that say exortizo te, imperative commands. Whereas the exorcism prayer in the new rite of baptism is theologically deficient. Also, you look at the Book of Blessings. You really don't yes, it's permitted by the church. Yes, there's a bless. Yeah, yes, but you could say the theology of blessing in the Book of Blessings is very deficient, especially when you see it like when it comes to like holy water. That's why I normally bless in this past year for the Feast of the Epiphany, even though we don't offer the old Mass every Sunday. My pastor is like, hey, can you bless our holy water supply for the entire year? So I blessed it using the Epiphany holy water blessing. I blessed like 40 gallons of it, nice. And that takes 45 minutes to do. And it includes the prayers of blessings for holy water in the old rite, but it includes other powerful exorcism prayers. And I've used that in certain situations as a priest, and I've seen its efficacy, let's just say. And my pastor at the time, now I was with him when I was not with him early on my priesthood in those situations, and we saw the efficacy of that Epiphany holy water in action. So like, you can make a legitimate argument. I don't think it's uncharitable, what you could say is like, yes, the church cannot fail in her mission, can't fail to bring about the saving graces of Christ in the world. But that doesn't mean every liturgical change is good. That doesn't mean every liturgical option is good or theologically sound or prudent, or the best. I think, again, it's important not to be prideful, but it's also important not to fall into this positivistic, quietistic aspect, notion of, oh, what our age has is the best and past. And I think that's condescending, and that's actually a violation of the sin of the fourth commandment. But we also have to be respectful of our current superiors and, of our current age, our current spiritual fathers, even if we disagree with them. Disagreement does not mean disobedience. You know,
Yeah.
obedience, like faith, seeks to understand. You know, Ratzinger was very critical of the New Rite reforms. You know, in many books, Feast of Faith, Sing a New Song to the Lord, Spirit of the Liturgy, and he noticed that, and he spoke. He uses an analogy in Spirit of the Liturgy that I've always found powerful, and that was a big book that I read in college that had a big and lasting impact on me. So before the council, the liturgy was a lot like a painting. Its colors intrigued us. We didn't know what it was about. We wanted to enter into the painting to understand it. But we enter into it in such a way that now we almost risk destroying it, whitewashing it completely. You know, talking about the liturgical reforms. And Pope Benedict, as Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger, has a lot of insight. Just be like, you know, obedience is never blind. It always seeks to understand, you know, and one could be obedient and respectfully disagree with somebody on a theological, liturgical level. And to have a difference of opinion on that doesn't mean you're contrary to the faith, you know, as long as it's not a matter of the creed, you know. And this is where, you know, there's a line between tradition, you know, the traditionalist movement and the Sedevacantists, you know. The Sedevacantists are essentially neo-Protestant, you know, because it gets messy, you know. Even though there's legitimate theological problems with the New Rite, you can't say it doesn't get you to heaven. Even though it may do that in a deficient way. There were certain things that happened in the church's liturgical life leading up to Trent that Pius V had to correct. And that's why he codified, you know, at Trent and said, yes, there are some older rites than the current edition of this missal I'm putting out. They can exist, like the Ambrosian rite, Mozarabic rite, rite of Braga, rite of Lyon, Dominican rite, Carmelite rite. But anything new is banned. You know, and he had to do that to correct, you know, certain things. So there was a conference had in the Diocese of Phoenix maybe 10, 12 years ago about the liturgical reforms. And personally, I'm sympathetic to the view, and this is my personal opinion. You know, you can disagree with me on this. I think most of the Council Fathers intended the liturgical reform to go the way of the 64 to 67 Missal. They did not expect it to go as far as it did. So an abbreviated form of the Old Mass that had some Latin, had some vernacular. But then Bugnini came in, you know. And Bugnini was not a good man, you know. He was not a good man. That doesn't mean, you know, church is cut off from the fount of grace, you know, because of Bugnini, you know. But Bugnini is a very controversial figure, and you know, it's bad, you know.
Yep.
We've talked a lot about Bugnini on the podcast.
Louis Bouet, no, the Yves Chiron biography on Bugnini is excellent. It's fair and balanced. Louis Bouet talking about how he had to redeem Eucharistic prayer too, you know, on a napkin in Trastevere, you know, at the request of Cardinal Ottaviani, you know, and how Bugnini manipulated liturgical reforms. Bugnini really didn't come onto the scene, even though he was involved with some of the Holy Week reforms under Pius XII. Didn't really come into major influence until the pontificate of Paul VI, you know. And he had shady dealings. And Bouillet said, we were recommending one thing, and Bugnini was saying the exact opposite thing. And Bouillet went up to Paul VI and said, Holy Father, I quit. I don't want to be on the liturgical commission anymore to reform the liturgy. He's like, why? You're doing so great work. You know, Archbishop Bugnini is telling me all about this. And Louis Bouillet said, no, he isn't. He's giving you his own agenda. He's not sharing with you, you know, our recommendations. So Bugnini is a controversial figure. Let's just put it that way.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Does that answer your question, Mike?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So we'll close off the podcast here. Yeah. So again, Father Matt, thank you so much for joining us. This has been an absolute honor.
Thank you very much. Would you like me to close with a prayer?
That would be fantastic, actually. That'd be so
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. God our Father, through your Son Jesus Christ, by the power of the Holy Spirit, you sustain us in your life and love. Help us to grow in your love. Help us to be faithful Catholics, not only according to our own desires and wills, but according to your will, according to your great love for us and your love for your bride, the Church, and souls. This we ask through the intercession of the Blessed Mother as we pray, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now at the hour of our death. Amen. The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
And with your spirit.
May Almighty God bless you all, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
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 Awesome. Thanks again so much. That's great.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Well, guys, now it's just the three of us. We can make
You and I.
I've been wanting to do a cover of Take On Me by Aha, but call it Quarantine. 6 feet away, coffin to your elbow, that's okay. Stay home all day.
I'd listen to it.
The stores are closed. Something.
Needs work, but
Yeah.
I'd listen to it.
EP will be released sometime after I die and someone finds it.
The devil's advocate will find it, I'm sure.
And we can't canonize this woman.
Too funny. All right. Well, guys, so this is the end of episode 58. We're going into episode 59 next week, and then our final episode of season 2 in 2 weeks. And it's going to be a great one. Also, just a quick update. The Great Shave campaign, help us get to 700 Instagram followers, and y'all can shave my beard in whatever fashion you want. So share us with your friends, and yeah, let's see a beard massacre, shall we?
Yeah, let's. And a Chris hair dye.
Don't do it.
Honey, if we get to 800, your beard is going too.
I'm fine with it. I am willing to sacrifice for the followers. That sounds really pagan. I'm sorry.
Oh gosh.
But it's only
you guys
for
know what I mean.
It's only for the Catholic followers, though. If you were sacrificing for the pagan followers, it'd be a little bit different.
That's only allowed for coronavirus, right?
Too funny.
Sorry, dark humor. Speaking of our last episode, did we talk about the topic of that on the podcast yet?
Not yet, no.
Because I wanted to talk about how Father Matt kind of alluded to the topic.
Yes. Maybe we'll just leave it as a hint for now and talk about that next week. But in the meantime, if you're listening to this, next week is going to be our Catching Foxes ripoff episode, where we're going to be doing 10-minute topics. So make sure you hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at Theology of the Buddy, and send us your questions that you would like us to talk about in our 10-minute topic segments. We've already got some already lined up from some friends, and we're going to be bringing in some special guests to answer some of those questions, because we're not experts. And yeah, so, but yeah, make sure you send those questions into us. I'll be posting it in our stories every day, starting the day this releases, or no, the day after this releases. So, yeah,
Thursday.
Yeah. So, anyways, guys, thanks again for hanging.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So again, like I said, follow us on social media. We'd love to get to know you. And if you follow us, share us with your friends so that we can get to that 700 follower mark before June 17th. And then I'll shave my beard just for you. And you get to choose the style. So make it happen. You can also email us at theologythebuddy@gmail.com for the record with the questions, if you're not a fan of the social medias. And please make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. You can find us on Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Just look up Theology of the Buddy and hit that subscribe button. And if you would be so inclined, we'd love a review. We would really love a review. If you leave a review, we will shout you out on the podcast either next week or in the following final episode podcast. So make sure that you do that, and it'll help us out big time. So anyway, that's it. That's it for us. So from all of us to all of you,
stay tratty.